Hello, I'm Charlotte Jones, Education Director at the Museum of Craft and Design. Today, as the inaugural profile in our ongoing 2020 Designing Change conversations, presented in collaboration with the MCD Design Council, I'm super excited to be speaking with Emily Pilloton, founder and executive director of Girls Garage in Berkeley, California. Girls Garage is a nonprofit design and building program and dedicated workspace for girls and female identifying youth ages 9 to 18. Emily is a designer, builder, and educator. She has built a farmer's market with high school students, a playhouse with girls whose mothers have experienced domestic violence, a school library designed by its own middle school students, and microhomes for a homeless housing agency. Her work seeks to change the authorship of our built environment and cultivate power in underestimated communities, specifically young girls, undocumented youth, and communities of color. With an educational philosophy rooted in creativity, design thinking, and project-based learning, Emily also works with educators and schools to reinvent teaching and learning in more hands-on and community-focused ways, which, of course, we love. So thank you so much for speaking with me today, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
To begin, I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of the Girls Garage mission and values and how those values ultimately led to your COVID relief efforts.
Sure. So Girls Garage, your intro was very thorough. Girls Garage is a physical workspace here in Berkeley, California, and we're a nonprofit that serves girls ages 9 to 18. Technically girls ages 9 until they graduate from high school. And the overall mission of the organization is to use the act of design and building, and specifically carpentry, welding, architecture, and engineering, to give girls a feeling of power and agency through projects in the community. And so our home run is to be building real world projects for community clients, most often other nonprofits, and to give girls all the power to design and build and install them and to see physical artifacts that they created in their own communities. The sort of larger goal is to change the demographic makeup of the industries that create the physical world. This is architecture, engineering, STEM, planning, that are predominantly white and predominantly male. And so this isn't just about statistics for us. It's not just the fact that only 3% of the trades are women. It's also that if we have more women in these spaces and more women in the industries that get to create and author the physical world, that our world will look and feel very different and will be more equitable. So that's the end goal. And I guess the last thing I'll say is just I'm sitting in the Girls Garage space now, and the space itself is really representative of our community. We have hundreds of girls who are with us every year. They are truly diverse in all the ways across age, race, background, geography. And the things that we get to do together here are rooted in bravery and sisterhood, and really challenging our own expectations of what girls can and should do in the world.
That's incredible. I mean, I, for one, as a maker and a builder, am looking behind you and like, wish I was there right now, get my hands on some of that stuff. So I know that you and the girls had an immediate response to the pandemic when it hit. And I'm wondering if we could learn just a little bit about the arc of that, what it looked like initially, and then now that we're a few months into it, what are the changes? What are the challenges that maybe you faced during that process, and where are you at now?
Yeah, back in March when the shelter in place first happened, the city of Berkeley and most of the counties closed down all businesses except for essential businesses. And so that meant we had to physically close our physical space, which is sort of the heart and soul of everything we do. And so immediately, I mean, as a leader, I didn't really have time to mourn that. I just was like, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to problem solve this? And so almost immediately we shifted our spring after school classes to a virtual model. And as you can imagine, carpentry and welding and using power tools is not the most ideal content for Zoom. But we put together take-home builder kits and toolboxes and material kits for all the girls in our program, so that they could build the projects they would normally build here at home with all the same stuff. We also expanded. We knew that there's, I think in the spring we had about 60 girls in our after school program, but there were families everywhere beyond just the girls in our program who were really struggling to keep kids engaged. I mean, there was a huge question mark about what school was going to look like. And so we also wanted to provide builder kits and hands-on activities for all families. So over the next couple months, I think between March and June, we made 200 builder kits. And these included a DIY toolbox, a build your own birdhouse, a starter toolkit, piles of scrap wood to make whatever you wanted, and we gave those to families in the local area. The other thing we did is we recognized that there was, amongst the pandemic, there were so many creative people who were had a design background or had fabrication facilities, and they were responding to the need for PPE. And so there's a partner shop down the street that's run by a dear friend of mine, and he started making face shields. And we offered to help assemble them. And so over May and June, we put together about 1,500 face shields just to contribute to the effort. And I think this is also a thing we've tried to do even amongst the constraints of COVID, is that this space exists for girls to also be able to respond to what's going on in the world. So it was important for us to make birdhouses and to be engaged in an effort to respond to the pandemic in a productive and positive way. And then I would call that phase one, Girls Garage COVID era phase one. And then in the summer, we had some really interesting adjustments and discoveries. And I think the big learning for me is that even though this space is so physical and the work is so physical, the connection that our instructors have to the girls in the program remains just as strong. And over the summer, in normal times, we would have cohorts of teen girls here with us from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And every week we build a project for a community client. Last summer, we built a sandbox. We started on Monday and we delivered it on Friday. Same thing the next week. And we built a public parklet, and we did all these things in real life. And so the question was, how do we continue to build things at a scale and with an audacity when we're not physically together? So we put together giant toolboxes. They were like about this big industrial toolboxes, and we stocked them with 20 different tools for girls to take home and keep forever. So this is a drill and a driver and a saw, a tape measure, hammer, all the things, a starter kit of sorts. And we did our instruction virtually, and girls built chairs and a shelf for the local food pantry. And I guess what all that adds up to is that this constraint of not being able to gather actually forced us to think about what self-sufficiency looks like for girls. That if they're in their homes and we provide them with the tools, you're really forced to be more self-sufficient than you would be even in this space. And so that was a great learning. And going into the fall, we've carried those lessons with us, that our relationships with girls feel very much the same via Zoom. We're still able to have hard conversations. We're still able to support them. I can't reach into the screen and help you with your project, but I can ask you questions and talk you through it. So it's been hard. It's been very, very different. I'm an instructor who thrives off of in-person hands-on support. But all that said, I think that our community feels really strong, and I've been so heartened by the girls and families who have stuck with us and have just been like ready for whatever building project we throw at them next.
Well, and I can really relate to that. Our organizations have a lot of parallels in trying to figure out what is this next step from in-person gathering to now trying to continue to build the same kinds of connections and memorable experiences when we're having to go virtual. And that's just really a major part of it is, redesigning. And I relate a lot to what you said about not being able to mourn the closing of your space. I mean, our Make Art Lab has been turned into offices now so that we can safely be distanced while we're working. And, I feel like, okay, well, there it went. And now we just have to rethink what it's going to be like and how can we still make these experiences. And it's doable. And you're definitely a guiding force in that and an inspiration for that. So I appreciate it. And so it's continuing to talk a little bit about education. We both know that education definitely comes in different forms, and some of those may be particularly surprising. Has there been an educational experience outside of any formal training that has altered your own perspective and given you skills that you maybe wouldn't necessarily have had?
Oh, that's such a good question. I guess there are two things. One was sort of a seminal moment of my childhood that was not part of my formal schooling. I've always, as a young person, I was always making stuff and always very, very sort of mechanically minded and spatially aware. And when I was 16, I had the opportunity to travel to Central America with a group of teenagers from all over the country. And it was a service trip. I was in Belize for the whole summer. And while I was there, I worked alongside local masons and carpenters, and we built this entire town park, a huge gazebo, benches everywhere, shade structures. And I was 16 years old, and this was my first construction site. And that, I didn't go into it thinking about it as school. And yet it fundamentally changed the way I thought about what I could do in the world, what I could do for a living, and what my impact could be as a young woman. So that really solidified for me my love of architecture and my love of what architecture can do in communities. And then I don't know, as an adult, it's funny, like you stop going to school and yet you are still hungry to learn. And I don't know if this is a great answer, but now that Girls Garage exists as a space and as a community, not just of younger women, but of my colleagues, my teaching instructors, and I work with 2 women full time who are our director of development and our creative director. And I have never, until this point in my life, been able to work amongst a group of women that feels so supportive and powerful, and that we're all here to share our expertise. I worked in a lot of spaces where it feels either competitive or everyone's out for themselves, or you're sort of helping, but really it's about the company. And I think my greatest source of learning right now is my colleagues. And I work with some women who are professional welders and metal workers, and others who have backgrounds in development or carpentry. And when we come together, it's just magic. And I had not experienced that before as a grown-up. And so I really look to them as my greatest source of learning.
That's incredible. So my job is to connect educational experiences with the exhibitions that we show at the museum. Thinking, and part of that actually, and part of our conversation too, has to do with our upcoming exhibition, Moto 2020. I'm wondering if you could choose to do an exhibition in a museum on anything, even if it's unrelated to what your current design work is, what might that be?
Oh, wow. I have like 20 ideas at the same time. I'll just pick one. I was part of a design jury one time. It was actually a grant review committee. And I remember this project that I looked at it, and I don't actually know if it was ever an exhibition that came to be, but it was an idea to show unbuilt architectural ideas. So like ideas specifically it was for Washington, DC, all of the ideas for Washington, DC that never got built, but they were beautiful renderings and drawings, and some were from the 1700s and some were from contemporary times. And I just love the idea that you could exhibit things that never came to fruition and yet represent like incredible human creativity and ingenuity. So I guess my response would be that I would love to see an exhibition of the most audacious, ambitious, beautiful, crazy design ideas that young women would come up with for what they want the world to look like in the future. And that might be architecture, it might be planning, it might be art, but I think that giving girls the space to dream without limits can really shine a light back to us about where we're at and where we might go. And I've seen a lot of exhibitions of female artists and of collectives of female art, but I think something about the unbuilt, the dreamy, the sort of aspirational would be a wonderful thing to see.
Great. Sounds like a wonderful program that we should probably put together. Of course, none of this is doable, possible, dreamable without funding. What would you say is the biggest challenge when seeking resources to support your work? And maybe what's the easiest time that you've had finding resources?
It is, I mean, as a nonprofit leader, that is the number one challenge. I mean, I would love to say that's gotten easier. And it's sort of, I remember I used to run long distances. And when I would train for a marathon, I would always think like, oh, the next marathon will be easier to train for. And it doesn't get easier because you get better and you just keep pushing. And that's sort of how I feel about running a nonprofit and fundraising is we meet our goals every year somehow, but then the next year our goals are more audacious. So it never gets easier. It just becomes bigger, which is exactly what we want to happen. I probably should not admit this, but it wasn't until a few years ago that I really started doing budgeting and financial projections. For the first like 8 years of my nonprofit leadership, I know how to do accounting. I had great bookkeeping skills, but I wasn't saying, here's our goal for the year. Where are we on track to meet it? Now we do that at a really high level. But the point of all this is that at the beginning, I wasn't focused on dollars. I was focused on relationships. And I was really able to cultivate relationships with donors and partners and foundations and supporters that were based on trust and that were based on a mutual understanding and belief in the program. And that paid off. It really paid off. And I think now I'm seeing some of the benefits of building relationships based on trust and not on dollars, because when COVID hit, there were funders of ours that I didn't even ask who stepped up and said, what do you need right now? This can't be easy. And so I guess I keep coming back to that. Of course, we have to pay our bills, and every year our budgetary needs get bigger. But I think it's never been easy, but it has been easier when I just remind myself that there are people who support us, who have trusted us with their children and their money for years. And that feels really good. My director of development is an incredible woman, and it's her job to worry about money. And every now and then we have to have a conversation like, okay, let's stop worrying and let's think about how we can fundraise around hope and not around crisis. And so I try really hard to focus on the joy that our girls bring and how we can tell that story and ask people to support us around that.
Great. Well, and one of the ways that you are telling that story in a way that people can support you is through your book. Can you speak a little bit about what that looks like and how what people might find in their copy of it?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So here's the book. Book looks like this. It matches the wall. I'm realizing how close that color is. So this is a book that I wrote over 3.5 years of work, and I wanted to be able to capture the experience of physically being here at Girls Garage and some of the learning that girls partake in printed form. And so it has 4 different elements. The first is a giant tool encyclopedia. So you can flip through it, and here's a whole page on building materials and how lumber is sawn at the lumber mill. This goes all the way up to things like power tools, and there's a whole section on welding and measurement. So the first 200 pages are just tools, 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 tools. There's also a section called essential skills, which are things like how to draw plan section and elevation, how to carry lumber safely, how to make your toilet stop running, how to fix a flat tire. These are things that everyone should know how to do, and especially young women. And then there's a section that is all project guides. There's 11 different projects, and they range from things like build your own toolbox to a bike rack or a doghouse. And then the fourth thing that's sort of interspersed throughout the book are these builder women profiles. And so these are little like 2 and 3 page vignettes of builder women. Some of them are like, here is Kesali. She's actually a teen girl who's in our program. And then that goes all the way up to a woman named Kay Morrison, who's in her 90s and was a real world Rosie the Riveter in World War II, and everything in between. So as you're flipping through it, you kind of get these faces that jump out at you. They're like, I think of them as cheerleaders telling you that you can do it. I wanted to share their stories because they're speaking in first person and they're talking about their relationship to tools and building and what it has meant to them and inviting you in to participate. So I've thought of this as Girls Garage in printed form and really as an invitation for girls and women everywhere to join a movement of the girls that are here and fearless builder women all over the place.
That's awesome. We will definitely need to just let everybody know that we are going to be doing a giveaway with the book. So keep your eyes trained on the MCD at home activities that we have coming up because you will be able to get a copy of the book either by winning it or purchasing it outright. So one of the things that you talk about in the book and just in your values and everything is your dedication to accessibility and inclusion. And, you know, at MCD, that's a kind of cornerstone of our community outlook. Could you talk just a little bit more about that and how it plays a role in Girls Garage?
Yeah, we think about accessibility in a lot of different ways. The first and sort of most obvious is financial barriers. I don't want any girl to not feel like they have a place here because of whatever financial situation their family is in. And that's been especially important right now when it's just, you can't make any assumptions about where family finances are at or how folks are doing. So all of our teen girls attend Girls Garage at no cost. We don't ask, it's not based necessarily on income, although we do try to give some preference to girls from low income communities and households. But every girl who's in high school attends for free. And then for the younger girls, we provide full and partial scholarships, a pay what you can option. We just don't even want that to be a thing that people worry about. And then, of course, this is a physical space and the work that we do is also physical, but there are girls that have physical limitations. There are girls that learn in different ways. And so, you know, we've built so many different little step stools just because our tables are this high. And there are girls who come to us and are 9 years old and it's a little too high. So even like small things like that, we try really hard to always have a bilingual person who's with us. And I speak mediocre Spanish, but we try hard to think about language and also just learning styles. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the worksheet. I don't want to assume that everyone can learn by sitting and reading instructions. So often we'll have a written component, a spoken component, and a demonstrated component. I think this all comes back to just, we really value having one-to-one intimate relationships with girls and families. And so I know most girls' birthdays, food allergies, zodiac signs, how they prefer to work, if they like to work alone, if they like to be in a group. And we have small enough groups that we really try to pay attention to those things and create a space where everyone feels like their own style of learning is honored and seen.
And how many students do you have at any given time?
Well, normally pre-COVID, we don't ever have more than 12 in this physical space. That, with one exception, our summer school for 9 to 13-year-olds will have 24, but we have 12 upstairs and 12 downstairs. So we almost never have greater than a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 teacher to student ratio. And of course, now that things are looking a little bit different, we actually are going back in person in the fall, but with only 4 to 6 girls at a time, and most of our work will be outside.
Excellent. Well, my curiosity is definitely piqued about the space and where all of this amazingness is happening. Do you mind giving us a little tour?
Sure. So I'm gonna awkwardly pick up my laptop and take you with me, but I'm sitting in front of our giant tool wall right now. So this is where all of our hand tools are stored. And I'm actually gonna start back up at the front if you wanna walk with me. So when girls enter the space, this is our reception area. So here's our front door. And when girls walk in, the first thing that they see is this giant wall of wooden tiles. And each one of the square tiles has a girl's name on it. And these are all the girls who have ever attended a program here. And then we have these double wide tiles that are individual supporters of ours. And then we have these triple wide tiles that are either corporate or foundation supporters of ours. So this space is like the main entrance, and it's meant to be welcoming and also like a way for girls to feel seen in the space, that your name is physically on the wall. So girls walk in, they come through these double doors. Through these double doors, it becomes a girls only space. Parents are not allowed to come in and stand over their daughter and ask questions. So girls only past this point. And then this is our main workshop area. So we have 6 work tables. All of our major saws and drills and sanding equipment are set up along some of these bench tops here. We have a table saw. And then this is set up to accommodate 12 students. So we'll have normally 2 students at each table, a little bit different right now. And then on the other side of the space, we have this like open sort of unscripted maker space where we use these big tables either as a big pod or we'll pull them apart. But we do things like screen printing here. We often, at the beginning of every class, will have a check-in where we invite girls to sit and we have a quick community discussion or an icebreaker moment. And then we also have a welding setup that's a little bit ad hoc, but this is our welding screen, this red screen. And we have a MIG welder over here. And we do some welding just actually right outside our front door. We have a little concrete pad and we weld right outside. And then one of the more recent additions, which you're gonna be the first to see this actually, we have an upstairs mezzanine, and up our stairs, we've previously used this space as more of a classroom instructional space, but we're in the process right now of converting it to a print shop. And we just last week acquired a risograph printer.
Oh, wow.
And so we do some screen printing and other 2-dimensional graphic design work, but we're hoping to convert this entire space into, think of this as like the newsroom press corps for the production of a Girls Garage Gazette and posters and lots of printed things. Then we have this little book nook over here. So the whole space is very open. It's very colorful. As you can see, there's tons of girl-made art all over the space. There's some photos of our girls and then art from other artists who inspire us everywhere. So we think about the physical space as an invitation. I want every single corner of the space to feel like girls can see themselves in it. I'll just say one other thing about the tool wall as I walk back over here. So this tool wall, when we were setting up the space, I remember thinking, I've done a lot of consulting and work with schools who are thinking about their own maker spaces. And one of the questions was, should we put everything on wheels? Like, should we have everything be in a mobile cart, or should our tables be on wheels? And we made a decision to do the opposite and make everything fixed. Every single thing has a specific place and every girl knows where that place is. So we did this on purpose so that girls, when they walk in, they don't ever have to wonder, where are the hammers today? The hammers will always be right there. There will always be 16 of them, and I can look across the room and know when one is missing. And we also did that with the tables. Like, there's a fixed place to do different activities. So this is for safety and also for a sense of security and stability, that girls can walk in and I've solved the tool problems for you and you can just come in and do that creative thing you want to do.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Consistency is definitely something that can actually help breed creativity. So I think that's a really good idea and something for us to keep in mind too, as we are redeveloping what our space is going to look like, what our mobile make art space is going to look like as well. So I definitely appreciate that tip. So then as we wrap up, would you mind just letting people know where they can find you? Do you have, what's your social media, all that good stuff so that people can learn more?
Sure. So our website is girlsgarage.org. There's a lot of information about our programs. We have a blog and some stories and some press links there. And then we use our Instagram account as sort of a video and photo journal of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Um, so our Instagram is @_girlsgarage.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Emily. We really appreciate you being our inaugural profile of Designing Change 2020. And we appreciate everything that you're doing in order to design change.
Thank you so much. I'm honored.